The following is a production of Texas Lutheran University. For more information, please visit tlu.edu.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Stuart Dorsey, President of Texas Lutheran University, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Giesber Lecture, which is the final event of our annual Krost Symposium. The theme of this year's symposium has been the innovation experience, and so we are proud to feature a true innovator and entrepreneur tonight, Veronika Scott. Innovation is not a spectator sport, and you can't learn about it by listening to a lecture. And that is why this year's Krost Committee included an innovation challenge. The Seguin and campus community was invited to submit ideas for positive change that would impact our community. And the response to this challenge was impressive. We received more than 40 submissions to the TLU Idea Map webpage. These broad concerns were then assigned to groups of students taking our freshman seminar. And those student groups proposed innovative responses for meeting these challenges. The Krost Committee then reviewed the proposals with the winning proposal to receive a $500 grant to continue work into the spring semester. Now, the winning idea and proposal was a solution for affordable, quality clothing for students and members of the surrounding community. And I'm pleased to recognize the students who prepared that winning proposal. They are Aria Pluck, Meredith Berger, Lindsay Rios, Gunnar Robeson, and Yaquanza Martin. Each of these students will also receive a prize of $25 and Bulldog Bucks for their work on the proposal. Most importantly, the work on this challenge will continue next spring in a TLU activity module that any student can enroll in to address the challenge of affordable clothing for students in the surrounding community. So let's again congratulate the students who met this innovation challenge. Way to go. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alicia Olson. Dr. Olson is serving in her 9th year as a Texas Lutheran professor, and she holds the Jesse H. Jones Chair in Business Management. Dr. Olson's teaching is primarily in the fields of marketing and management. She has long been interested in the rising field of social entrepreneurship. In collaboration with Professors Phil Ruge Jones, Rebecca Zuckery, Chris Bollinger, Londa King, and Shannon Ivey, she has created the BA in Social Entrepreneurship and serves as its inaugural director. Alicia also is a member of this year's Krost Committee. And so here to introduce this evening's program and speaker is Dr. Alicia Olson.
Welcome to the Frank Giesber Lecture of the 2013 Krost Symposium. A little bit of history about this lecture. One of the founding fathers of the Krost Life Enrichment Program and Krost Symposium was Dr. Frank Giesber, Professor Emeritus of Economics who served Texas Lutheran as academic dean when the idea of the Krost program and symposium became a reality. In recognition of Dr. Giesber's contributions to the establishment and ongoing support of the Krost program, the keynote presentation of each Krost Symposium is now titled the Frank Giesber Lecture. Dr. Giesber and his wife are here tonight, and I'd like to recognize them. If you can wave your hand, Dr. Giesber. As Dr. Dorsey mentioned, this year's innovation theme, this year's Krost theme is cultivating innovation. Our speaker tonight, Veronika Scott, is a very special type of innovator, a social entrepreneur. You may have heard the expression, give a man a fish and feed him for a day, teach him to fish and feed him for a lifetime. Bill Drayton, the man who coined the phrase social entrepreneur, took this one step further by describing people like Veronika in this way. Social entrepreneurs are not content just to give a fish or teach how to fish. They will not rest until they have revolutionized the fishing industry. Founder of the Empowerment Plan, Veronika Scott has built an organization that began around a single idea: to design a coat specifically for the homeless. The coat is self-heated, waterproof, and transforms into a sleeping bag at night. That idea has now transformed into a system of empowerment in which homeless women are paid to learn how to produce coats for people living on the streets, giving them an opportunity to earn money, find a place to live, and gain back their independence for themselves and their family. Veronika is the youngest recipient of the John F. Kennedy New Frontier Award from the JFK Library and Harvard University. She has also received an IDEA Gold Award from the Industrial Design Society of America and is one of Crane's top 20 in their 20s. The Empowerment Plan story has been told all over the world and shared at events such as the Forbes Philanthropy Summit with Oprah, Melinda Gates, and Warren Buffett. Let's watch a short video showing how Veronika is revolutionizing an industry in Detroit.
Is this thing on? Hello? I really hate watching myself. It's always hard. You always see me looking back and watching your faces. So this is all started as a class project. And you saw a lot of the story right there. So I'm just going to try to recap it, and I really want you guys to ask me a ton of questions, because I can sit up here and talk and talk and talk for an hour and watch all of you fall asleep, but I'd rather not do that. So what I'm going to get into is really, I'm just turned 24. And this started off as a class project in art school. I had no business experience, no financial experience, none whatsoever. So a lot of this story is absolutely hysterical because it is an art student trying to start a business. And it's talking about a really tough issue. I'm talking about homelessness and people are laughing. But I think my story makes it really amusing, and so you understand that this is crazy. I can't believe today we have 20 people making 500 coats a month. And what they're capable of doing, the fact that no one has known how to sew when we hire them to what they're doing now is pretty amazing. But you saw the stats. There are 20,000 homeless in Detroit. That's a lot. There's actually estimated about 40,000. And what happens when you get that situation is you also have a lot of abandoned buildings in Detroit. We have about 64,000 of them. So you pretty much have a building, like a skyscraper-sized building, for every one homeless individual. So people disappear into the landscape a lot. And that playground was the first playground that I saw I can't believe they found it, but it's one right next to a shelter. And pretty much a week or so after shooting it, it was burned to the ground in a turf war. And no one knows what happened to the people that were living inside. And that's really what inspired the coat and inspired the project. Because we all stumbled around in that studio, all of my classmates. We had no idea, because we're in Detroit and we're supposed to design to fill needs, and most of us were just trained. We're learning how to make a toaster sexy and make a fire hydrant, make it look fast. And we're all studying product design, which is how to design things to become obsolete, how to make a nice, trendy, hot-looking fridge or microwave or something along those lines. We were taught how to do those things. So when it came time to actually design for needs, most of us were like, what are you talking about? We're used to designing a nice cell phone or a really hot Nike shoe that has a crazy fisheye angle lens and 7 different colors all swooshing off the page. And most of us had no idea what actually talking to other human beings was like, because we spent most of our time in front of a computer. And then going out on the streets, we all kind of gravitated to a couple different shelters after Googling them, which is really bad and really dumb. We end up picking one. And we all go there for the first introductory meeting, and it is a 1-story building, has no windows, 1 door, surrounded by barbed wire, and hundreds of people walking around outside of it because they're waiting to get in. And you can only get in at 8 o'clock at night. So me and 5 friends go for the first time. We only talk to 2 admin people, and those 4 other friends never show up again. I go back alone at 8 o'clock at night a week later, which is really stupid and really naive, and I don't recommend anybody does this. But apparently the nickname for the shelter on the streets was Hell. A lot of people were dropped off there after being in prison and having nowhere to go. A lot of people that didn't want to engage with human beings anymore, that were still using, that were still drunk, that were schizophrenic and off meds, went there, and I had no idea. That's what you don't see in Google. That's what you actually need to go out and experience. And I brought all my ridiculously pointless design research tools with me, like sticky notes and Sharpies and disposable cameras and a questionnaire that was absolutely pointless, that was like, what are your needs? What are your day-to-day? And this is what I was gonna ask people in this shelter. What do you need? I can't believe, I'm surprised no one kicked me out or got actually physically violent with me. But I brought this all in a giant black trash bag. I had to go through both metal detectors and a pat down to get in front of a room of about 50 people sitting in chairs watching TV. And this guy, built like a linebacker, arm in a splint from breaking up a fight the day before, pushes me out in front of the crowd, says, "Good luck, you're gonna need it," clicks off the television, and everyone stands up and starts swearing. And I am standing there clutching my bag of literally pointless objects to my chest as if it's going to prevent me from bodily harm, like physically protecting myself from the very angry crowd for which I just turned off cheers. You know, I ruined their evening by being there. And I think this is what everybody has to learn when you're engaging with a community you're not a part of. You should not go in there thinking you're a savior. I was the biggest pain in their butt that night because I destroyed their evening. And I think you have to be understanding of that. I just stood up there after everyone quieted down after 10 minutes of the swearing, and all I said was, "I need your help. I am broke. I'm living with my family. I want to talk to you because I need to pass this class," basically is what I said. And I said, "I just need your help. I just want to listen. Seriously, that's it." The overwhelming response is, "If you want to help us turn our television back on." But after that heartwarming welcome from the group, only about 10 people talked with me. I gave out all the disposable cameras. I think I got 2 back. Didn't use any of the stickies or Sharpies, and pretty much threw away the questionnaire once I met my first person there. And I said, "I'll just be back again in a couple days," also at 8 o'clock at night. I was there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 o'clock at night for 5 months, developing this coat. And you saw the picture that inspired the coat, so I'll gloss over that. Let's just say building the first one was a horrific experience because I didn't know how to sew when I started this project, which is hysterical. I had nothing to do with fashion and nothing to do with sewing whatsoever. I had to learn how to sew from my mother over spring break. Worst experience of my life, bar none. And probably for her too, because I probably wasn't the most excited to be being there with her, trying to sew recycled wool coats, trash bags, billboard fabric, and orange construction fencing on a home sewing machine. I'm sure she really didn't like me either. And so we made the first coat based on seeing that playground being made into a makeshift home. And built the first coat. It took 80 hours to build one. As a manufacturing person, that's bad. Not only did it take that long, it also smelled very strange, because in my perspective, recycling meant literally taking things that were used or trashed or old and making them into something new. Not exactly true. And then on top of that, it had the construction fencing, which also made it painful and also heavy. So I brought this Frankenstein monstrosity back to me like a kid with a macaroni painting for your parents, like in kindergarten, to this group of people that I had slowly gotten to know. And like I said, the first woman actually couldn't stand up in it because it weighed so much. And it smelled really, really bad, like wet dog mixed with dirt and other things. And that first coat was I have to say, the biggest, most epic failure, because when you laid it out like a sleeping bag, it looked like a body bag, according to them. They're like, great job, we really love your tenacity. What in the world is this, and we're never sleeping in this, oh my God. And so I think that was the biggest thing that we all take for granted, especially in college, is how we can definitely fail and have room to fail and room to design really ugly things. I cannot tell you how many ridiculous Swiss Army knife toaster things I designed. And the fact that no one, you get a bad grade, but it's not the end of the world. You're not getting kicked out. You don't have to worry about those things. And I was lucky enough to be doing this in college, because I did that first one, epic failure, did another one that only took 60 hours. And another one after that smelled somewhat nicer, that only took 45, and continued to do this. And by the end of 5 months, was known, I had actually been given a street name, the crazy coat lady, or the crazy white coat girl, or the crazy coat girl. Like any of those mixed together, people were actually coming up to me off the streets that hadn't met me before and saying, "You're the crazy coat lady, right? When are we getting coats? When is this happening? When am I getting my coat?" And I'm like, never. Because it is me and my mother in my grandparents' house making one every 2 weeks. I don't think this is a sustainable business model. But it was amazing how many people asked and kept on pestering me. There was a guy that had been on the streets for 20 years. His name was Pee-wee. He was 5'2", had the deepest, most raspy voice imaginable, and had been living literally on the streets for 20 years. Everyone in this area feared him. And he was like my number one salesperson. He would walk around and be like, "She does coats. Anybody want coats? She does coats." And I get the first one, but you get the next one. She does coats. And I'm like, okay, well, I think I have to do coats now. And quickly realized it was amazing as a product designer to spend, or as a designer in general now, where your entire life is on the computer. And if the computer dies, which it did once, it's all gone. And everything I did while in school was just evaporated. And that was hours. I remember spending 80 hours rendering a chair that already existed somewhere else that I could have just taken a picture of. And realizing that I just spent 80 hours doing that, and that's all I had to show for it. And then being able to do this and having people come up to you on the streets, strangers, asking for you for something that you created. It was crazy. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try to make this another class project and really upset all my teachers and see if I can do kind of the art school version of paint by numbers, my first business plan. And it was really amusing because it was a very beautiful business plan. It was 15 pages of pictures and one very tiny spreadsheet in the back that said I needed $1,600 to operate for a year if I were to make this happen. And that's absolutely absurd, and everyone should be laughing because $1,600 equals nothing. But being an art student, math and finance and business were not something I was actually good at yet. And that business plan, though, was very beautiful and very pretty and told a great story with pictures. And I remember going to the dean of my school going, "Hey, I'm the coat lady now. People want this. Now all I need is $1,600. You should just give me the money. And then I'll be set and I'll make this happen." And the dean of my school happened to be the design director for Patagonia for 20 years. And he goes, "Well, we're not going to give you money, but I may know somebody that can." And I don't know how many of you guys know of Carhartt, like the construction wear. He ends up calling, and I didn't know this at the time, the CEO of Carhartt, which is based in Detroit, on a Wednesday. Thursday morning, I get a call from the CEO on my cell phone saying, "Show up at my office in 2 hours. Wear what you're wearing, bring whatever you have, let's talk about this." And I do. And I show up there in a mixture of clothing and with what looks like a giant trash bag, but isn't. It is my newest, less smelly iteration of prototypes. And I show up there with also the very beautiful business plan. Pointless business plan, but very pretty. And I go in there and we meet for an hour. And he's being really nice to me because I don't know how else he couldn't have just sat there and laughed. And at the end of the meeting, he goes, what does $1,600 actually get you? And I go, it gets me sewing machines. And mind you, this is all of my sewing experience that I have, is home sewing machines. And I heard about this mythical other machine that sews faster and that it's tough. And that's it. That's my entire spectrum of knowledge. And he goes, well, what? I'm like, it gets me sewing machine. He goes, what kind of sewing machine does it get you? I go, the industrial kind. And he goes, well, there are more than one type of industrial sewing machine. And my mind is blown in that moment. And I'm sitting there pretending to be really cool, like I know anything at all about sewing. And he's sitting, and this is the CEO of a multi-million-dollar entity that spans into other continents. And here I am going, okay, yes, other sewing machines. He goes, there are single needle, double needle, triple needle, serger, and he keeps on going off where I can't imagine how many more needles it has. And so my spectrum is stuck to 1 through 3. And this is literally the thought that crossed my mind. I thought 3 was overkill, but 2 needles are bound to be better than 1. Entire decision-making thought process right there. And I'm like, 2 needles have to be faster and stronger, right? 2 lines of thread. Like, I had no idea. I had no idea what they would be used for. And so I say really coolly, like, yeah, we need double needle sewing machines. We need like 3, pulling numbers out of my head just like randomly. And he's like, okay, all right. And we go through the entire Carhartt store pulling off fabric and things like that. And I get the call the next day from the plant managers for all their US plants and another call from the one in Mexico saying they have 2 semi-trucks filled with 2.5 tons worth of equipment, 3 industrial sewing machines, each weighing 500 pounds, hundreds of thousands of yards of fabric, needles, threads, bobbins, everything you can imagine. And they're like, we've gathered it all up for you today. It's all set. Where is it being shipped? And at that point, I hadn't thought that far. And it was being shipped to my grandparents' garage until I could find something better. And it was really, and people talk about like, so how did you build out this plan and this business? I'm like, and the way I say it is so political, it happened organically. Really, it happened as it happened. And you will find space when you need to find space, and you will make the rest of it. And it ended up, one person that liked the idea happened to run a shelter and put us in a closet, really just a closet. And she's like, well, this should work. Use this closet. I'm like, okay. And that was our first space. I painted it lime green and covered one wall in cork, and it is, that was it. And that's how we started. And realizing that probably having myself and my family chained to sewing machines, making one every 2.5 weeks, wasn't a good idea because I wouldn't give away what I make for free. It's cruel because I am horrible at sewing. I'm like, I probably shouldn't be doing this. And I hired 2 people at the same time. And at this point, for some reason, one article had been written up about us in a local newspaper. And then it went viral, which was the weirdest thing in the world. I was like, why are you even bothering? I'm still living with my grandparents. I'm in a closet. Nothing's happened yet. But all of a sudden, the same time we're starting this, I was being interviewed live by CNN, asking, where do you see this in 5 years? And just like sitting there like a deer in headlights, like, in a bigger space. Like, that's it, employing more people. And with that, for some reason, people really got behind it, and we were funded for 9 months by the PayPal button on my blog that I started the day that class started. And because of that, I was able to hire 2 women. And I was 20, 21 at the time, had never had experience hiring anyone. And so therefore I interview a group of people from the shelter because they're there. And I end up hiring Sig and Alicia. And Sig had been in prison for a decade for grand theft auto and drug trafficking, and had quite the felony rap sheet. She was also 6'1", 350 pounds, butch lesbian. And her real name was Signoria, but she preferred Sig. And Alicia was the other woman we hired that showed up 2 hours early for the interview, did also have a felony track record, but had 3 kids. Sig didn't have any family. Same amount of time, same training, same pay, same everything. 3 months later, Alicia has moved into her own apartment, has fully furnished her own apartment, put all of her kids into charter schools, and her youngest son started learning Japanese. While simultaneously, Sig ends up getting kicked out of the shelter, sleeping in her car, and decides, well, I have enough money to start drinking again, I'm not going to show up to work. Same 3-month timeline. And after that, it kind of was just set in stone. Like, this is who I need to hire. So Alicia was the first person. We eventually did get more space because we couldn't actually build a full coat, we realized, in the closet, because it would touch from end to end, and we would run out of space to actually sew a full coat. But it's been amazing since then. You know, the people that we have on the team now range in age from 21 to 60, and none of them knew how to sew when I hired them, not a single person. And it's just amazing to see what they can do with it. You know, our youngest, her name is Jen. While I was going to college and going to high school and getting my degree and doing all of that, she was on the streets in prostitution her entire life by her family, and was living in her car with her youngest son at 21, like 22, when we hired her. Same with Annis, another person that was in the prison for 15 years and got out at retirement age and ended up not having anywhere to live because nobody wanted a felon that was that old living with them or near them or even remotely by them in the same neighborhood. And while I was going to school, that's what happened to Jen, and that's what happened to Annis, and it was amazing hiring them for the first time and teaching them sewing and seeing where they took it and where they ran with it. And I'm going to show you the coat. I'm going to call upon some poor student, one of you guys, to try this on. But from not knowing how to sew, each one of these women, we now have 12 on the floor, from not knowing how to sew to 3 months later being able to make this in an hour and a half. I'll show you. Starts off as a bag, opens up, coat, and do the magic trick part, sleeping bag. Woo! Now this is cool and all, and especially when you saw that white coat and where we started, it's gone a long way. The outside shell is actually sewn with Kevlar. We have an internal insulation that is actually made out of recycled GM automotive scrap. So we actually use recycled car insulation as our insulation in the coats, and we still work with Carhartt in making these. But we recently got a 3D printer, and I'm sure all of you guys know about it at this point with all the duck legs and the ears and stuff being 3D printed. But that's technically what I paid, what was it, like $250,000 to learn at CCS. And what I'm doing right now is probably going to really upset them. And that is, I'm going to start paying everybody that comes through how to learn how to 3D model, how to use CAD, and how to code. Because what we're going to start doing is printing all the buckles and the clips and things that you see on here in-house from actually recycled plastic scrap from toy companies. And we're going to start doing all of that because I'm really sick of seeing the same resume over and over again, even from other college students that say under skills, Microsoft Word. You printed me your resume. You can use Microsoft Word. I can tell. And what's the real problem with that is we're telling people and we're equipping people for jobs that don't exist anymore. That job existed 20 years ago. The one that you had the printed resume that said Word and people were like, that's fantastic. That doesn't happen anymore. That's almost expected. But people are still telling others, you got to put that on there. That's really a skill. That's computer 101. And I see that over and over again. In every resume that we get, for every one job opening we have, we go into a shelter for 1 hour, and 50 people apply. And we close it after 1 hour, because too many after that do. And it's the same 3 fast food joints, it's the same temp job, and it's always, I know how to use Microsoft Word. And the problem with Detroit and a lot of other cities is public education kind of failed them. It is a screwed up system, and it hasn't been a screwed up system for like a year, it's been a screwed up system for 20. So there's a lot of people that graduated, went through it, actually passed or got their GED and got out, and then couldn't compete in the job market, period. They couldn't even pretend. And then they can't go back in time and learn it all over. So what are you left with? A whole generation of people from like 20 to 60 that can't compete, that are just literally being passed by everybody else looking for new hires. So what we're doing, what I'm trying to do, is to start to pay people to learn. Pay people, pay these single parents that have come from shelters, that have come off the streets, how to do this, how to code and 3D model, and see what happens. Really, because I'm excited to see, because we give them microloans, every single person, for housing and transportation. I'd love to see if a creative business comes out of it, because every year we do a Project Runway Week, which we give the ladies all a whole different type of material. Last year it was denim. We had denim bags, we had denim dresses, denim aprons, denim shirts, denim floppy hats. It was amazing. And I would love to see what they would do with that if they had the same opportunity applied to what you guys are probably learning now. So I'm really excited about that, and I think I would like to have a volunteer to try this on. You. Since you were so eager, you're like, hello, I want to try this on. It's really toasty. And it's really amazing, something that I did not expect to get anywhere or to get any attention, how much attention it's garnered from the fashion industry as post-apocalyptic chic. No joke, literal quote there. And there's it should be really toasty. And so there's a lot of really odd design elements that are on here. Thank you. Woo! It's very slimming. This is also a double extra large, and I apologize, we have a lot of these. You look fantastic. I just do the gangster lean, like just lean back. There we go. There we go. That's what I ask everyone to do. But we have a lot of really odd design features. You can take it off, I know it gets toasty, and I won't make you get on the ground and as a sleeping bag. I normally do, but it's kind of mean. Thank you. So it has a lot of strange things like Velcro instead of zippers, things like that we only get from actually working with the people on the streets. Zippers break, and once they're broken, you're done. Velcro is more expensive, but will last infinitely longer, because you're not going to get somebody that's schizophrenic that wants to go and change out a zipper at the tailor if it's broken. We watch people with bungee cords holding coats together. But it's amazing how people really like this and are like really excited about the coat, and I kind of get why, but like it's a jacket. It's nothing crazy. REI will sell you one that inflates, and you could go whitewater rafting in. Like, okay, this is nice, but I'm really excited about the ladies, because what they do within 3 months, every single person we've ever hired within the first 3 to 6 months has moved out, has been able to furnish their housing, and become financially stable. First 3 to 6 months. Some have 6 kids. Like one woman has 8 kids, all under the age of 12, and was able to do that on her own. So it's amazing what they do, and I think this is the exciting part. And so what we're becoming now is training and teaching, and then launching what you guys know as Tom's Shoes or Warby Parker. We're launching a Wear One, Share One program in the next year, where we sell items like this, not as post-apocalyptic-y, more what I would wear or anyone else would wear, but that fund directly what we're doing with teaching and the coats that we distribute internationally for disaster relief and for those living on the streets. So So we're very excited about that. Now, I can continue on rambling, but I think it would be really great to have you guys ask questions that you're actually interested in hearing the responses to. So if anybody has anything to ask. There are 2 microphones, I believe, that you have to come up to. Or if anybody wants to try this on, because she made it look very good.
Hi. This has been incredibly inspiring. I'm wondering if you can go back and tell us what happened in the school part of your experience. Like, were you allowed to repeat the project? And then did you graduate, or have you just taken this on?
You know, I graduated for a couple things. I picked a school based on what school gave me the most financial aid and the most scholarship, because my grandfather reminded me no debt is good debt. So you need to get out and you need to be able to start this, and without that, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But really, it was a couple people in the school. Like I said, the dean actually, ran the design department at Patagonia for 20 years. So he had the experience. And in typical product design fashion, most of my teachers were like, this is really nice and everything, but you need to go get a job, and then you need to go do this. So come back and do this like in 5 years. And I kept on really upsetting teachers by trying to make it a class project until I graduated. And I wanted to get a degree just to finish and make it through it. I pretty much did not do a good job the last semester, but I tried. But it was amazing that Emre, who recently passed away about a year ago, who was the design director, came in and said, since no one else seems to want to do this with you, and I think this is a viable product design, this is something that is valuable, no matter what all these other teachers are saying. He's like, I'm going to put myself on the docket as faculty to teach you. So he put himself on. He never taught at the school he was the dean of. He put himself on as a teacher to just meet with me once a week and just say, go. And I think that was I think I've had different mentors all the way through, but that was the most impactful, just having somebody there that said, yeah, you should do this. This is what needs to happen. Otherwise, it was a struggle to balance the two. And I understand why a lot of people say that you just drop out once you have a project, but I'm very glad I finished. I'm glad I got my degree, mostly for my grandparents. I think they would have killed me. But, it's having that connection back with the school now is even more valuable. We're actually pulling interns and pulling people from the school to help teach how to code and how to draft and do all these things later. And it was a very rough transition for me to say doing this as a class project to doing it as a business, because you go to school and you're trained, get internships, then get a job, and then do what you want 10 years from now. But really, we had so many people that were excited, and I can pull all-nighters and I can do all this, and I'm that excited about it, why not do it now? I figured if I failed, I would just end up where I started, and that wasn't as bad as we think it is. A lot of people are terrified about what would happen if they tried something and messed up and screwed up and it didn't work. We're lucky enough and we have the privilege to be able to make those mistakes and not have it be the end of the world. A lot of the people I work with have made a mistake and never recovered from it. But right now, even being here, the fact that you are here, the fact that you're in this school, gives you that opportunity to go out and mess up and make something ugly or make a mistake and do it and learn from it and have it be okay. It's not the end of the world. And I think that's something now I try to do with our team, is give them that same opportunity to fail. They've never had that opportunity. They're terrified to make mistakes when they're sewing this. And just breaking them out of that and seeing what happens is probably the most exciting. And that's what I learned only from going to school.
You haven't really spoken about any additional training besides the sewing of your coats, but you talk a lot about how the women come from prison and living on the streets and being homeless to being able to be self-sufficient and independent in 3 months. Are you giving them education on life skills? Are you saying that if they have the resources that they know naturally what to do? Can you speak to that?
They really don't know naturally. A lot of it was never a part of their upbringing. So most of what we do is basic employment training. And if they do get a microloan, they have to actually sit down and create a budget with us. But a lot of it should be common knowledge, but isn't, and we forget about that. It's like, yes, you need to show up to work on time to keep the job. And actually having somebody sit there and like have an epiphany moment was shocking to me. They're like, really? I'm like, yes, what? Of course, you gotta show up on time. And they're like, wait a second. And the fact that that happened early on made me realize, I'm like, okay, we've got to put it out there and spell it out and have as many people come in and support us. So we actually don't do handing out directly of coats anymore. We partner with distribution groups across the US because I realized outside of that tiny area in Detroit, where I'm known as the crazy coat girl, outside of that, nobody knows me, no one trusts me. And the same thing goes for a lot of our life skills. There are so many agencies that do that. There are so many counselors and people that do that, and I just want to stick to doing one thing well. And that's the teaching part of it and the production part of it, and just doing those two things is already enough. So what we do is we plug in with other nonprofits in the area that really help us, but the fact that we do micro-lending and we have addiction services and stuff on site really helps with that. And so, yeah.
Hi. I have a similar question, but it's kind of two-parted. So you said you didn't have a lot of experience with business and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So did you have someone that kind of taught you this is how you teach these employment skills, this is kind of how you do this, or is it just kind of trial and error? And then additionally, are there certain attributes or qualities you look for the people you hire just to make sure that you can get someone who's gonna be self-sufficient like that?
Okay, so first question, I think I'm gonna upset a lot of like MBA people by saying this, but obviously, the way that we've been doing business up until this point hasn't exactly worked. That's kind of obvious. The traditional training of this is what business should be hasn't set up many good, there's been a lot of business issues. The way that we the way that we look at revenue is kind of screwed up. The way that we look at cost of things is really screwed up. You can go into Walmart and buy a t-shirt for $1, and if you think about it, that cannot actually be made for $1. How is it being made for $1? And really being conscious of it is really difficult. So not having business knowledge starting out kind of created a really out there model, an out there business model, but then was kind of restricted by others. I knew that I didn't have experience in legal and accounting and that I needed to go to people to ask them those things and show them my business plan and have them shred it and literally tear it apart. And that became kind of a to-do list. They'd be like, well, this isn't good enough because you need this, this, and this. You need a system of payroll, you need to do this. And it really just became a to-do list of, okay, this is what I got to tackle next, because I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know the next step. Had I known, though, had you gone back 3 years and told me today all the stuff I've had to face and all the things, the challenges, I probably wouldn't have done it. It was great that I went into this naive, and there's a lot of businesses that started this way, that you just tackle the problems as they come. Because if you are told everything ahead of time, it is too much. You will be crushed by it. And I think that went into hiring and the employee side of things as well, because employees are a whole other spectrum of it. But since we don't hire anybody with the skill sets, we're not hiring for skills. It is a really intensive interview process. It's actually a 3-part interview process that we actually come into the shelter, meet people where they are, have them come to us, and we ask them a series of emotion-based questions. Because we could basically have an episode of Jerry Springer every day on that floor. Every day. It is always just a hair from happening. But what we need to make sure of is that when we're giving you constructive criticism, you're not going to throw the coat back up in someone's face and tell them to screw off and you don't know what you're talking about and start a fight. So we need to find out, and the second part, which is even more important, is if we give you all of these things, if you are eligible for a microloan, and if you are given these skills and the tech skills that and these classes and conflict management, will you even do anything with it? And then the third part, which has to do a lot with addiction, okay, why did you stop? when we hire people, they have to be clean and sober. And that's because they're in a shelter, and shelters require it. But a lot of people stopped using and stopped drinking, not because they wanted to better themselves, or because they felt that they needed to. It was because they had to, because they didn't have the money. And what becomes a problem later on in the workforce is when they all of a sudden have disposable income again. They've made their money, and they get to go hang out again, and they have money to spend. And what are they going to spend it on? And that's when people can easily fall back. And so there's our huge series of questions also has to do with the definition is completely different, let's say, of the word respect than it is for me. Their definition is completely different. And some of our questions are like, what do you do if somebody shows you disrespect? And it's amazing the type of answers that come out of that. One person told me, we learned that violence was not the answer. I'm going, what do you mean violence is okay? We had an argument, and I learned that physical altercation is not a way to resolve a problem. And I'm like, you're not hired. But you have to get at those questions to get people to open up and really understand what's their motivation behind it, and if they're actually going to do anything with all of these skills that we give them. Are they going to go beyond and start their own thing, or are they just going to show up to work just to come to work and have a paycheck? So it's a really intensive process.
You're inspiring.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Our motto.
Hi, I'm a huge fan. I don't want to necessarily ask you what you're doing next, but where do you see yourself in 10 years, 10, 15 years?
What I really like is I have no idea where I see myself in 10 years, because I have changed, and this has changed me so much. And we've only existed for the last pretty much year and 9 months. 6 months after I graduated, I got invited to do the Forbes conference. Randomly, 1 week ahead of time, they're like, come to New York, be at this thing, it's high security, we're not telling you anything else. And I found out the list of people that were there. There were only 100 people invited. Oprah was opening, and then Melinda Gates and Bill Gates were going on next, and then Diane von Furstenberg, and then I was going on, and then Warren Buffett was talking during lunch, and I had a stroke. Like me and the one other person working with me at that time just spent the whole afternoon just hyperventilating. So it's things like that you cannot predict. Those are things that you cannot put into a plan. And those are really how this business has gotten this far this quickly. That's the only it's amazing what just happens out of, one, social media, and two, just circumstance and being in the right place at the right time. So I don't know where I see myself with the company. I have, of course, the crazy aspirational dreams. I really want us to open up a for-profit entity that funds what we do. Because we have a product to sell. We've gotten a lot of people asking, I live in Aspen. I drive an Audi. What if it breaks down? I want one of your coats. I'm like, did you read our website ever? Just a little bit of it. Did you read the first line? And it's usually a no, but we have a demand for it, which is amazing and exciting. And we've really just been telling people no over and over again, and they get really mad. They feel very entitled. They're like, why won't you sell it to me for this? And for $200, we're like, no. But we finally come up with a really great email response to it. For every $10,000 donation, you get a coat. So if you donate $10,000 or more, and that really slows down the requests. But, and you never know. By chance, there may be one person. But it's finally that we really want to become sustainable, and I really want these women to have the opportunity to really grow with it. So we're actually going to start selling these to fund the ones that we give out on the streets. It will have the portrait of the woman that sewed it inside, and a signature and a number to remind everybody that this is going to be limited edition every year, and that once we sell out of them, that's it. Because if I learned anything about the basics of product design, it's a stupid little triangle. And the basics is about there's only 3 attributes for any product ever, period. It can either be fast, cheap, or good. And you can only have 2 at any given moment. You can never have all 3. So whenever you're looking at any product, period, ever, it fits into that triangle. Which 2 is it? And what I've noticed is a lot of, obviously, like Kmart, Walmart, all those guys are the fast and cheap. And Tom Shoes and Warby Parker try to be good and, fat, things like that. They're trying to straddle all of them. But we realize that good has kind of like a double meaning. Is it good for the people that make it as well? Are we treating people, are we Foxconn? Are people jumping out of windows because the working conditions are horrific? Or are we someplace that's actually good for everybody involved? So good has a kind of double meaning, and we realize that we will never be fast and cheap, and that's okay. And that anybody that ever works with us, even when we launch our 4-product line, has to understand that immediately. And that's it. That's really what we're sticking to. And at this point, other cities want to bring the model on, which is amazing. I was in Paris and Oakland, and they all want to bring that educational side on. So it could be 100 people in Detroit and then 50 people throughout the US. We don't know. I really enjoy that. Any other questions?
Could you talk a little bit about what it means to be in Detroit right now, to be building something that seems exciting and new and helping people in a city that no one seems to care about? I mean, I know Detroit, and I kind of care about Detroit, so that's why I want to know.
I think everyone should move to Detroit. It's hardcore and it's awesome. I really love the city. It's exciting right now because a lot of people are starting up their own businesses and just kind of getting, not free reign, but having the ability to grow and have space to do so. And it's a really amazing community as well. Like everybody you talk to, everybody you know in that area, you're going out at night and you see the person that started their own coffee shop and then the other person that created their own bar. And it's not just, a lot of these businesses aren't just good for Detroit or good little Detroit businesses. They're recognized on an international level, which is really exciting. And right now in the city, it's gone from kind of the perspective of Detroit will never be this grand, amazing space that it used to be. And it's always been kind of that negative undertone from people that have lived there. It will never be as great as the 1930s. Well, yes, of course. And it's becoming more of like, what can it be, or what is it going to end up? And I think that's to be a part of that time when Detroit is redefining itself. We don't know 100% for sure if it's going to be fantastic, or if it's going to be what we think it's going to be, or if it's going to be successful. But if it is, being in Detroit at this point is a very big moment for the city and for whoever's a part of it right now. The attention that's paid, the media, the fact that everybody's just fascinated with it. They're like, abandoned buildings and this, and this and that, and all these artists. And it's a great time to be a part of the city. Yeah, that's, any other questions? No? Wait, okay.
Yes, I just wanted to know, how do you financially sustain your business? Like, you make the coats and they're for homeless people, but I was listening and I don't know if I missed it or not. How are you making money? And then that also, I'd like to know, how many people do you currently employ?
So right now we have a little over 17. We're going up to 20 this year, people that we employ. We're funded right now by private donors, and we understand that's a temporary thing. What our whole goal is to become sustainable by selling these. We can make one of these for about $65, including overhead and materials and labor and everything. And this thing can go below 0 and is right around 3 pounds. We also have 4 or 5 different versions that weigh like a pound and can go only 2 0. So we have a whole line of items. So we understand that starting as a nonprofit donation base was good for us. But we really are lucky to have something to sell, and that's what we want to do. We're funded a lot by the public, but secondly by like big corporations coming in and sponsoring these for a natural disaster. When I first started this, we had just done 25 coats out of that closet, and when the tsunami struck Japan, I had gotten a call from the Japanese ambassador through our consulate that they wanted 25,000. And we were 2 people in a closet. And we tried to make it work. And Delta Airlines had signed on, and everybody was like, we're going to do this. And we're like, there is no way this is going to happen. But we realized quickly that this is part of how we can become sustainable. We usually ask for a donation of $50 to $100 per jacket, and a company either comes in and sponsors it and picks a charity of their choice or a city of their choosing for us to send them out to, 300, 500, 1,000 at a time. And that way they get something for their donation. They're not only educating people, but they actually get to go and hand these out. So that's part of it right now. But the whole goal is to become self-sustaining, or at least where only a little bit of our revenue is needed from donations. Hello, baby.
I have a question. I know you talked about you had went to I guess it's a shelter where the women wanted to basically jump you for interrupting their show. Did you ever get to actually go back and show them this jacket?
Oh yeah, yes, we actually hand out coats there every year because they're just a part of how we started this. NSO, that group really shaped everything. So yeah, we come back and show it to them, and I think they were proud and excited when it was, that ridiculous 500-pound object, because they played a part in the designing of it. So it was really exciting to see their reactions now, and to see how valuable it is for people on the streets as an object that they can carry with them and not worried about theft and things like that they're proud of wearing too. So it's been an amazing reaction. Anything else? All right, well, if anybody doesn't have any more questions, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Students at TLU engage in high-impact educational experiences that include civic engagement, aesthetic expression, critical thinking, and a focus on intercultural knowledge in a community that welcomes the interplay of faith and reason.